It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
That would make me Sharon Gilbert, and we want to welcome you to our home once again. Get ready, get relaxed, get your dachshunds out if you've got them. Get your tea or coffee. And if you don't have a dachshund, well, that's okay. We love all dogs and cats and all that kind of stuff. We need to get a new dachshund.
Yeah, scratch them if you got them. Well, thank you for joining us this week. This week's topic is going to be a little darker, I think, than... which is saying something, considering that we've been talking about end times prophecy for the last 2.5 years.
Yes, I know. And it's something that's getting the attention of the world media. The press is talking about it this week. I think it was at the Daily Mail and other sources that were discussing the fact that the Pope and his crew have such a long line of individuals who require exorcisms that they cannot get enough people to take care of it. They don't have enough exorcists. And so they're just, it's like this massive long waiting list.
Yeah. And we acknowledge that there are issues with the doctrines, the official doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church, but we will say this, at least it acknowledges the existence of the reality of the spirit realm, the demonic realm, and is trying to train priests to deal with this issue. Among the Protestant world, most of us don't acknowledge that demons are even a thing, and that is tragic because there are events that take place in the news that defy explanation when you're trying to look for a naturalistic answer.
I know. Well, a few weeks ago, there was, back in May, there was a school shooting, and sadly it is not the only school shooting in recent years, that if you look at the young man's posts on social media, he was clearly a disturbed individual, and I don't blame guns. I blame people.
Yeah.
And in his case, I think he was hearing from entities that were controlling him. And we're not talking about humans.
Well, I agree. The Parkland shooter several years ago, Nicholas Cruz, told police that he was hearing voices, and a voice that had told him to commit the horrific acts that he did. The message that we're getting from the corporate media for the most part is we need to focus on controlling access to guns and controlling and better access to mental health care.
But I agree with the mental health care.
Sure,
I don't think that's going to fix all of it.
No, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. But controlling guns won't help it. First of all, if you want to break the law, you're not one who follows the law. Therefore, you're going to find a gun somewhere. But the other thing is, if it's not a gun, it will be something else. The United Kingdom is dealing with a rash of machete and knife attacks.
Right.
A few years ago in China, there were school attacks.
Right.
An individual would go in, this happened several times.
Right.
Would go in with a machete.
Right, involving edged weapons. So if guns aren't available, other weapons will be used. The point is to shed blood.
That is just it.
Right.
Shed blood, because that's a very old idea.
It is. It doesn't get to the heart of the problem. I mean, not every shooter, not every mass murder is
demonic. Not all of them. Some are just, evil individuals.
Right. I would say that even those who are mentally disturbed, because we can't rule out mental illness in every case either. And that's what makes this so difficult. We see into the spirit realm as though into a glass darkly,
yes.
Darkened, reversed, and
So we're trying to make sense out of a realm that we are not designed to interact with, which is why God was very clear with Moses. We don't consult necromancers. We don't consult with mediums. We don't summon the dead. What's really intriguing about all of that is that in the research for my book, The Second Coming of Saturn, I found that every time there's a prohibition on trying to obtain information from the spirit realm, it's in the same context as the prohibition on sacrificing children and burning them to Molech. In other words, the death of children was linked in the minds of the prophets, the Hebrew prophets, to consulting the netherworld or the spirits of the dead, the spirits of the netherworld for information.
I want you to go into just a little bit if you're not familiar with Derek's new book, The Second Coming of Saturn. It's really an important read as far as I'm concerned. It's your best book yet.
Well, thank you.
In it, you deal with this entity called Saturn, Kronos, whatever. He's got probably 24 names or more worldwide, and he's well known as Kronos for consuming his children.
Yeah.
And that's what was being offered to him.
Yeah. And of course, the myth that the Greeks told, as that aspect of their religion, was that he was told by his parents, Gaia and Uranus, earth and heaven, that he would be overthrown someday by his children. So as his wife Rhea gave birth, he would swallow the children whole, which is what led to the epithet or nickname he was given by the Greeks, technophagos, which means child eater. Of course, Zeus, according to the myth, was swapped out. Rhea substituted a stone. It only took 6 kids for her to detect the pattern. I'm going to see, he's eaten the last 6. Maybe I'll hide this one. Anyway, Zeus then rose up, grew to maturity in secret, freed his children, and punished Kronos by sending him to Tartarus.
Rhea gave him the
omphalos, yes, the stone that then Kronos regurgitated when he threw up the other Olympians, and that stone was set up at Delphi and was believed to be the site of the most famous of the oracles of Apollo. But that story is repeated over and over in the ancient world in various ways. I mean, the story is very similar in the Roman telling. Roman religion was very similar to Greek, but an older story was discovered in the 1940s when the archives of the Hittites were uncovered. And it turned out that the Hurrians, who are very ancient people who, in the book, I show how they trace back to a civilization that emerged on the Ararat Plain. In other words, below the mountains of Ararat where Noah's Ark landed around 4500 BC, and that they practiced this divination by digging a ritual pit and summoning the spirits of the netherworld because they believed that their version of Kronos, Saturn, called Kumarbi, was also banished to the netherworld. So this is a very, very old practice, and the sacrifice of children was intimately linked, inextricably linked to this practice of trying to extract information from these spirits of the netherworld.
So you connect to Saturn to Molech.
Yeah, this was based on some really interesting information. In the Bible, the chief god of the Ammonites is called Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. But in 2 Kings, Milcom and Molech are used interchangeably. Well, as with Baal and Bosheth, meaning, Lord, chief god of the Canaanites, and Bosheth, meaning shameful thing, the Hebrews twisted the name Milcom, which was just the Ammonite word for king, into Molech. But a scholar figured out by looking at all of the names of the Ammonites that have been preserved on tablets that Milcom was not actually the name of their chief deity. That was just their title. They just called him king. As we call Yahweh, the God of the Bible, we call him Lord, the Lord. It actually was El of the Canaanites. Well, El is Milcom, El is Molech, and then through other ancient god lists, sort of like the clay tablet version of Google Translate, we know that El was also Enlil of the Akkadians and Babylonians. He was a Dagon of the Philistines and the Amorites. He was Kumarbi. He was Saturn. He was Kronos. So, in other words, this entity, Molech, is the god the Romans called Saturn. And interestingly, isn't it interesting that the god best known for eating his own children and then accepting the sacrifices of human children was the patron of their most popular festival in ancient Rome, the Saturnalia.
I know.
So this entity in the book, I connect to the old chief of the Watchers mentioned in the book of 1 Enoch, Shemiyaza, who led the rebellion on Mount Hermon that led to the creation of these demonic, or rather I should say, monstrous giants called the Nephilim in the Bible. And we've documented in our book, Veneration, that their spirits were later called Rephaim, not just by the Hebrews, but by their neighboring Canaanites, who venerated these spirits, believed that they were their ancestral kings. Our friend Dr. Judd Burton has showed that the origin of that name, Rephaim, the phoneme behind that word is also behind the word for king or ruler in most languages in Europe and Asia. And interestingly, he traced it back to the plains of Ararat, the region between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus Mountains.
Exactly.
So that group of people, known as the Hurrians or the Horites in the Bible, appear to be the ones who brought all of this south into the lands of the Bible. The Israelites fell into this worship, and it continues to this day. Ancestor veneration is still a thing today, but it was the understanding of the early church that the demons that Jesus was casting out and the demonic activity that ramped up just as he began his ministry.
Not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Were the spirits of the giants destroyed in the flood.
Which I think is maybe why we are seeing a resurgence of demonic activity now, because they know he's about to come.
Exactly.
They read the Times better than we do.
Yeah. And we're not talking about the newspaper based in London or New York. So, or Los Angeles or anywhere. Yeah. Well, we're going to continue this discussion. The demonic activity ramping up now. What does it mean for us prophetically? Kind of a look at the news this week on Unraveling Revelation. Jesus told his followers to love our God with all of our hearts, souls, and minds. And that's what we try to do every week here at Gilbert House Ministries. This program is an outreach of our ministry. Every week, we search through the mysteries of end times prophecy on Unraveling Revelation. We look at the nexus of science and the supernatural on Sci Friday. We study the Bible verse by verse in chronological order at the Gilbert House Fellowship. And each week, I interview fascinating guests on my podcast, A View from the Bunker. Producing that much content takes time. Serving up that much audio and video costs money, and so we depend on your support. You can support us in a couple of ways. First, you can donate through our website at gilberthouse.org, or you can contact us through the U.S. mail. Gilbert House Ministries, P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633. And you can shop at our online store, a sort of a virtual book table, where during the month of June, you can save 20% on every one of Sharon's 7 novels in her series of supernatural thrillers, The Red Wing Saga. Just use promo code JUNE20 at checkout. That's June20. We are grateful for your help in fulfilling our mission. We thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and there are lots of things going on in our lives, lots of changes, as you have noticed, not just a new set, but we also have a store at our website, gilberthouse.org. So you can buy all of our books, including books that we've contributed to. Just go to gilberthouse.org. Is it /store?
/store, yeah.
And in the month of June, you can get 20% off any and all of the Red Wing Saga books. By the way, I'm editing book 8 right now. At the same time, I'm writing a future version. It'll probably start in about the year 2024, 2025. Not a coincidence. That is also the Red Wing Saga, but it's a current version, so following a descendant of the characters from the 19th century. But if you don't have book 7, it is only available at our store and on Amazon. So go to gilberthouse.org. When you check out, use the promo code JUNE20, June20, no space in between 20 and June, and that will get you 20% off all the Red Wing Saga books.
Yes. Take advantage of that. Well,
go to Israel with us too.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you want to see the places where all of these demonic things happen, in fact, we're going to Banias at the base of Mount Hermon. We're going to go up the side of Mount Hermon, not all the way up, can't get up there. UN is running it. But we're going to discuss all of these things, where they took place.
And Capernaum, which is even more significant than I realized.
Yeah.
Yeah, just before the Prophecy Watchers Conference in Colorado Springs, as part of my presentation on the connection between Mount Hermon, which is where the rebellion of the Watchers took place, is where Jesus climbed the mountain with the three disciples.
The very high mountain.
Yes, for his transfiguration. He began his ministry in the north. Gospel of John says it was Bethany beyond the Jordan. That actually was a reference to ancient Bashan. It's not Bethany, it's Batania, the Greek form of Bashan.
Yes.
So that's Capernaum, is in that region, and we'll explain why that's so significant as part of this tour. We'll be teaching and preaching all along the way. Messianic Rabbi Zev Poret will join us from Tel Aviv, and we hope you join us as well. You can find out everything you need to know online and reserve your place for the tour in 2023 at skywatchinisrael.com, skywatchinisrael.com.
That is going to be so much fun, and time is running out to join us in Turkey in October of this year, 2022. So go to skywatchinturkey.com for all of the information there. And both of these, the prices listed, are land packages, which means that you will arrange your own transportation to get over there. But if you want the tour company to do it, just call them or email and work that out, and you will be charged additional for that. But they usually get better prices.
Yeah. So, we hope we see you either in Istanbul or in Jerusalem.
Yeah, we have to get our own way over there too. So we're in that boat. Well, plane.
Yes. One of the things that was really disturbing about, well, there were many things that were disturbing about the events in Uvalde, Texas, not long ago.
Last month,
But this is just the latest in a number of high-profile shootings at schools. Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, back in 2018. Virginia Tech University back in 2007. Want to go, Sandy Hook, Columbine.
Well, and there have been a few others that have been in the news that didn't occur because someone stopped them.
Right. One of the questions that emerged, and we made reference to Nicholas Cruz, the shooter at Parkland, who talked about the voices in his head. One of the questions that's emerged is, and conspiracy theorists will look at this as evidence of a something darker taking place, a false flag. How is it possible that these young men, and it's almost always a young man, I can't think of a case where it was a young lady who went into a school with a weapon and began firing, and there are a couple of things the corporate media will not address. Obviously, they're not going to talk about the supernatural aspect of this, the influence of the principalities and powers who the Apostle Paul told us.
Even if the story were written, I don't think it would be actually published.
And even when this detail would seem to be part of the story, as with Nicholas Cruz. Secondly, in almost every single case where something like this has happened, there has not been a father figure present in the home.
That's true.
The God-designed template for the family, a husband and a wife raising up children and training them in the way they should go, was broken. And that, of course, is left out because now we're supposed to believe that a family can be, well, anything we want it to be. Thirdly, and this is something that I only stumbled on recently, is the influence of psychoactive drugs. I know that cannabis has its uses as in pain relief for people with certain serious medical conditions, but there is also a growing body of evidence that shows that it can lead to violent behavior and that it may have played a role in at least a couple of these recent shootings. Now, I've not researched this heavily, so I won't say anything more than that.
Well, I would even go beyond cannabis. I think that we see that some of these young people, and whether they become shooters or not, there are an awful lot of young people who are involved in very self-destructive behaviors that do invite demonic oppression.
And that's the point. It's not the drug itself causing it's the fact that it's opening the user to the influence of the spirit realm.
Exactly. There are witches who call themselves Wiccans and other necromancers, we'll call them that, who love to try to communicate with the other side, in other words, the dead, by opening portals.
Yep.
You can, I believe, sort of open a portal within your mind,
yes,
within your spirit by some of these drugs. And it's more than just taking the drug in some cases. You also have to be willing to participate.
Right. There was a doctor, a researcher, who years ago did experiments with DMT.
Yes,
which is,
ayahuasca.
Yeah. Which Dr. Rick Strassman is the name of the doctor who did this research, where he had volunteers agree to take it intravenously. Wrote a book about the research called The Spirit Molecule. And then he followed up with another book, which the title escapes me at the moment, but he was arguing in the second book that this might be the reason that the Hebrew prophets saw the visions that they did that were recorded in the Bible. Now, Dr. Strassman was raised as an Orthodox Jew. Don't know what his faith is at this point. Talked with him after his first book, interviewed him about the Spirit Molecule, gosh, probably 15 years ago now. But, well, not that long ago, because it was probably 10 years ago. But the point is that he saw it as just a chemical reaction to allow the user to perceive this other realm that was inhabited by other entities.
And why were they all angry and trying to kill people? Because they were seeing demons, and as a group, they all saw the same thing.
That's correct. There were reports from the volunteers that two witnesses were seeing the same thing at the same time. Now, you could not explain that away as just a shared hallucination. There is no such thing as a shared hallucination.
Unless they actually went to the same place together.
And were seeing the same entities, right. But yes, the accounts of the volunteers was that the entities that they encountered were at best ambiguous or ambivalent toward their, not ambiguous, ambivalent was the word I wanted, ambivalent towards their presence in their realm. But others were angry and became violent towards them. And yet, he suggested that we try to learn how to control this experience so that we could have the same sort of revelatory visions as the Hebrew prophets. In other words, receive prophecy. That's getting it the wrong way round. I believe that people do get prophetic words today. I think you agree with that.
I do.
But it's not on command. We don't rub a lamp. We don't say a spell. We don't perform a ritual and then God is compelled to give us a vision. It doesn't happen on command. You cannot go to school to learn how to become a prophet.
No.
But God will reveal things to his people if we are sensitive to his voice. And it just stunned me that he would see the results of opening the mind to this spirit realm. The experiences by many of the users was not pleasant, and yet reached the completely wrong conclusion.
It was terrifying.
Yes, and that, I think, is another aspect of what we're seeing with these horrific events, like what happened in Uvalde just a few weeks ago. A young man, invited something inside of him and allowed it to control his actions. And I think that suggests an answer to why these young men were so accurate with weapons that they were using in a real-world situation for the first time.
Because the demon was used to it.
Because the demon was used to it. You know that I recently took the course to get my concealed carry permit, and our instructor actually said the reason, because he's a Christian, the reason that you train with this weapon is because a day may come where you will be confronted by a demon.
And he meant that literally.
Yes, I think some in the class probably thought he was being metaphorical, allegorical, symbolic, speaking in figurative language. But no, he was being serious. And the only way to deal with a human who is indwelt by a spirit that has more experience at taking human life is through training. Now,
yes.
I think that suggests an answer to this question. Even police who train to use these weapons will only hit their target 30% of the time. And that's if they're not being shot at. If they're being shot at, if somebody's returning fire, the percentage is even less, 15 to 20%. Soldiers, similar figures, soldiers in the field.
But a young man
using it for the first time.
Perhaps a little experience or none.
Right. I mean, in the case of Uvalde, Salvador Ramos had only purchased the guns a week before. So how much experience could he have had?
Let me just bring up this regarding that same young man who has now discovered exactly what the truth about the world is.
Yes.
The late Russ Dizdar, whom we loved so very much, often talked about the a black awakening. And he meant that in the spirit sense, that
Right.
dark entities would awaken a group of chosen ones. They literally called themselves chosen ones. Well, one of the conversations online that Ramos had with, I think it was a young woman, and he said it not just to her, but to others. When they would challenge something he said, he would reply with, "Don't you know who I am?"
Yeah.
As if
Coworkers.
he considered himself a chosen one.
Right. Yeah. There was a coworker at one of the places, fast food restaurant that he worked at, that reported the same thing. And that thought occurred to me too.
Yeah.
What's really odd, and I discovered this in the writing process for my novel, The God Conspiracy, which I began back in 2003.
And you're writing a sequel to it.
I'm writing a sequel to it now, yes. But the plot involves a day when a number of people are just suddenly triggered and do all of these horrific events all at the same time, and then of course the government responds by cracking down on Christians. But it was before we'd ever heard of or met Russ and Shelley Dizdar.
Right.
In effect, I wrote The Black Awakening into The God Conspiracy without realizing it.
That's
I
what
was
it-
tracking
yeah.
on the same thing.
Yeah.
So in the editing process, I, as an Easter egg, put a reference in there to a preacher from Ohio. Russ and Shelley are both now home with the Lord, but so there's a reference in there to Russ. The point is that there is a reality beyond that which we see with our human eyes and perceive with our senses, and it is a reality that will not be reported on by the corporate media.
No. And many of these things are going to get worse and worse because these birth pangs that the Lord described, the events leading up to his return, were going to intensify. And so we are seeing exactly that. The signs that he told us to look for are intensifying, and that includes the fallen realm activity within our human realm. And I think that we need to remember when these things happen to keep looking up, but lifting up. Look up and anticipate the return of Christ, but lift him up with every chance you get. There are many of us call divine appointments, where the Lord will bring you someone into your path. It may be at the grocery store, maybe at work, maybe a telephone call, maybe somebody at your door. You don't know. But it's an opportunity. If the Spirit sort of nudges you, talk about Jesus, then you need to talk about Jesus, because we are not promised tomorrow.
Exactly. And coming back to what you said before, I think the reason that we're seeing this activity and the recognition of it by the Roman Catholic Church is that the time of Christ's return is drawing near. And just as in the first century, when the demonic activity of the spirits increased, we're seeing it now because his time is close. And as Sharon said, that means it's time for us to look up because our redemption draws near. Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at unravelingrevelation.tv and gilberthouse.org. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.